And as they get situated, I see many of our residents have signed in, so I'll be calling you off of the list for those who had some questions. But this is an open forum, and this gives us an opportunity to talk about some of the improvements, but also to talk about some of the questions that have been asked, some of the issues that have gone over. And one of the questions I have, Gary, Mr. Higgins, is we talk about the average of $7, right? Less than $7 per month for the average home. And the average home is assessed, as you pointed out, at around $240,000. That's not fair market value. That's your assessed value for purposes of taxation. A home assessed at $240,000 may sell for over $300,000 in change, but that's your assessed value. And one of the items, and I know, Gary, you know this, but 51% of taxes overall in the community are raised from residential properties, and 49% come from the industrial properties. That's simple math, but if you can explain to the crowd, what does that mean in terms of the taxation, and who's going to be paying what?
The tax levy for the school district on the debt service component, when we quote an average home, the voters are typically the individuals living in the homes. The other 49% of your assessed value, they don't get a free ride because we're not quoting that. If you had a building assessed at $1 million or a factory assessed at $10 million, they're going to pay their fair share. All right, so they don't get off on this just because you're a homeowner. We're only quoting that $240,000 because that's what an average home is. If you could sell your house as the mayor says for $300,000, you're not paying $34 on each one of those $100,000. You're only paying it on once in a tax duplicate in the tax assessor's office. Those buildings, those factories, they're going to pay their fair share. So they're not going to get any benefit out of these improvements in the new school, but they will pay their fair share.
So the residents will pay 51% because that's what they make up of the tax base, but Amazon, Goldman Sachs, Kinder Morgan, ShopRite, the rest of the businesses will be paying 49%
Correct.
of the new construction. Okay. Our first question for a sign-in is Tina Vallejos. Tina? John's going to bring you a microphone.
I wanted to know what new technologies will be implemented in the schools, whether it be the existing one and the proposed one.
Well, we would continue to grow what we have. Let's say our Chrome one-to-one device, the way we're applying it now with the 6th grade and the 9th grade, that's an endeavor that we expect to continue in the district. But the science labs also come with, state-of-the-art equipment that our kids are going to be able to utilize in the classroom.
I can hear you.
Okay. And also, I want to mention the auditorium also will have the best in sound and lighting that there is. If you visit some of these larger high schools, they have the best equipment that there is out there, and so that would be part of it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nick Rotonda didn't speak as of yet today, but Nick spoke at the last meeting, and of course he's the project engineer on this. Nick, there were some questions relative to the location in front of the high school. And first and foremost, I'll throw out to the board, is this, or to the panel, is this the best location for a school? Can it not be built somewhere else in the community? And I'd start with you, Rose, and then we can go around the board.
I think it was definitely the most cost efficient for us here in the district. It was land that we already owned. There wasn't anything that we needed to purchase. There wasn't anything that we needed to knock down. And we can get the process going a lot smoother and a lot faster.
Nick, you've been familiar as a city engineer for some time with T&M, and you've been familiar with the property in town. Somebody said, why can't we put this on the DuPont property along the waterfront? Why can't we simply build it along there? So, and talk for a moment, if you will, about the issues on the DuPont property.
Sure, DuPont specifically is a contaminated site, that's number one. They are required to do some work to cap it. That does not make it uncontaminated. It's not an ideal location. Also, it's not ideal for location because it's not in the middle of the district.
In fact, though, their deed restriction in the DEP will prohibit residential growth or school construction on a chemical site.
That's correct. They won't allow that. Even though it's capped, even though it's protected, that's not something that they want to use. The brownfield is specifically for other type of uses, usually not public use. Sometimes it's a park, but those parks are then capped, but it can't be for something that's a public use like this. But to answer your other question concerning location-wise, this is an ideal location. Superintendent just pointed out that if it was not a property owned by the borough, it would take a much longer time between purchasing it with a survey and a transaction.
There was a question in the last meeting, and certainly online, I've had this question that I've asked during this process, but how are we handling some of the additional parking in the area? Now, the city has acquired and has put additional parking in the park, which many of the teachers use, and that's freed up parking around the high school. But specifically on Lewis Street and on Washington Avenue, how are you handling additional parking for this building?
So they've investigated purchasing an additional lot which is directly adjacent to the parking lot of the high school. And we looked at how the parking lot of the high school is configured. It can be reconfigured to gain a few more parking spaces, which will be done as part of this. And we can add those additional spaces plus the new ones on the lot that's directly adjacent, which means we're going to be adding, while we're adding more staff, we're also adding more parking to supplement it and reconfiguring the ones that
So you're picking up 25 classrooms, you roughly have 25 to 30 teachers in the building. The new lot, which more than just investigate, the board's voted to condemn the property. So for anybody who lives on Lewis Street, this is the home that clearly looks like it should be torn down, that we've had issues with on property maintenance for some time. It's an absolute shithole, and see, the benefit of being the moderator is I can say that. And it's right next to the rear parking lot of the high school. And so that property, the board is condemning to knock down to tie into their additional parking and to pick up additional parking spaces of roughly 20 to 30 spots, right? Now, with regard to the stormwater issue, as you know, Washington Avenue is a low-lying area. What considerations has the team made in raising the building and handling stormwater capacity and storage?
So that existing corner, which is a little bit lower than the floor of the elevation of the high school. High school is about 11 or 12 elevation. The intersection somewhere about 6 or 7. You can't see with your eye, but if you stand at the intersection, the building's a little higher. That does flood. But because of Carteret's low-lying area and the tidal influence, when the tide gates close, the water can't get out, so that area stops in that location. We're providing stormwater for that. We've actually met with the NJDEP and they've approved our concept. So when we put this new building in, the area that's currently going to be collecting water will hold that underneath the building. One of the questions was asked, how do we do that? It's actually an open building underneath. We're going to fill in that area by taking some of the soil out and holding it. While we hold it, we wait until the tide dissipates and then we discharge it. So basically, we're going to be improving the stormwater opportunities from the building itself.
So it operates, is this the right analogy? Does it operate like a retention pond?
Absolutely.
Okay, so someone at the last meeting used the term pool, which I happen to agree with, but I understand from an engineering perspective, you're not going to use that term, but you're holding several feet of water under the building, which otherwise would be on the street.
That's correct. We're holding it there, we're detaining it, which means we have a small little opening, we're letting it out at a rate that's less than the current rate. So right now, if it rains, it's going to fill a certain amount. When we're done, it'll be less.
So based upon DEP regulations, this new building, which will be elevated, which will have a stormwater detention system underneath the building, can't adversely impact the water on the street. You're putting less water on the street than you would be if it was simply a grass area.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's a state requirement. I'll add one other thing. We actually met with the borough engineer and I spoke to your office and administration about other opportunities to provide some additional stormwater, which hasn't been designed yet, but I found at least 4 or 5 areas that could become operational and add to collecting the water, doing the exact same thing and improving the intersection.
So unrelated to the school project, because it's not under their authority, the city has engaged T&M to take a look at stormwater management and control in the area. We've looked at, or are looking at, upgrading the stormwater lines, perhaps putting additional storage pipes underground, increasing the capacity of those lines at the park, on Lewis Street, on Washington Avenue, and even perhaps in between the two school buildings.
Correct.
And that would just be for added capacity. All right, our next question from the public that's signed in, Kirandeep Sidhu.
Good evening, everybody. I basically think people really need to ask themselves a simple question. Will this solve the building problem? You're still not decreasing student numbers. You're not adding to the integrated classes to curriculum. I know in the last meeting I mentioned life classes, you know, and Dr. Jones, you mentioned that you guys are looking into a shop class, you know, for I believe it was 6th grade. But I feel like, you know, it shouldn't just be a 6th grade option, it shouldn't be an after school option. You really need to think about the students that really are at that academic level. In addition to that, it would be great if we could just showcase a new high school. For families being a brand new high school, I understand there's a dire need for students, you know, at the lower levels to find added spaces. But it's just disappointing when you go to high school and it just looks old and really like torn up. I mean, I know Superintendent mentioned, you know, we don't want to just keep continuing with patch-ups, and I get that, but at the end of the day, I really think we should get a brand new high school, but that's just my opinion. In addition to that, I know the gentleman mentioned, I guess, Higgins, is it?
Mr. Higgins, yeah.
Mentioned the taxes, you know, what exactly the tax option consists of for the homeowners. But the 40% that was mentioned the last meeting that we're expecting from the state, that's not guaranteed.
That's guaranteed.
We have that in writing?
We have that in writing.
Okay, so will that be referenced on the school website?
It should be.
It's part of the
It's part of the presentation.
But what we can do is put up the
You
two.
don't mention the 40%.
What we can do is,
Mention that's in writing.
we can put the 2 letters up if they aren't up already. I'd recommend that we put the 2 letters up from the Department of Education certifying the funds towards the project. And that's about $7.5, $8 million that's guaranteed for this. In terms of debt service, they don't write a check.
Right, I know.
They
that.
pay their share of debt service.
I just didn't see it right. But I have one question for Mr. Rosenberg, I have a minute left. You mentioned this could be the pictures. Is this exactly what's expected, or is this maybe not?
This is what's expected.
It is what it's
Yes.
expected. Okay, thank you.
The final building material on the front may change, but the footprint and the construction is the same.
Yes.
The pictures, right?
Yes.
In the pictures, yeah.
If I could follow up on Perth Amboy, I believe there's 31 whole school reform districts in the state of New Jersey. They were formerly known as Abbott districts. Perth Amboy is one of those districts, and their new high school will be paid by all of us. The state of New Jersey will pay 100%. So those taxpayers, the taxpayers in Perth Amboy are paying nothing. They could never even afford a new high school like that. But us as residents of New Jersey are all contributing to that new high school. So that's where that high school is coming from, not the taxpayers.
And as Rosa, as you were mentioning, that school cost how much?
$250 million.
And that's because
So I
they,
just want to mention, right, that in order to build a high school, you're not talking $37 million. What's required of a high school is going to be at least 3 times more than that amount. And we didn't think that that would be reasonable to go out to the voters and do, especially when that's not the need in the district right now.
but are there any capacity issues currently in the high school? Is the high school over capacity?
No, and
So
that's
it's-
what I'm saying, the need is obviously not there, that it's not an overcrowded building, no.
Our next question is from Susan Naples. Susan?
I know we're several hats in the community, and this was touched on a bit. But I have one question, one statement, and one suggestion. As a resident of Lewis Street for
You better get that all in under 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
As a resident of Lewis Street for 37 years, Lewis Street has flooded on many occasions. My question is, do you anticipate any additional flooding due to the building of the school?
No.
Pardon?
No.
The answer is
No.
no. Lloyd mentioned that, but as Nick touched on earlier, the new projects can't add any additional flood water into the streets. So it has to store all of the water on site that would have been generated on site. So it actually reduces the amount of water going into the street. It doesn't solve any problems that may already exist on the street,
Correct.
but it doesn't make it worse. It actually reduces it.
That was my question. Next, just being my statement, I applaud the administration and the Board of Education for the way they restructured the schools as it has to do with grade levels, pre-K 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the high school. As an educator and a parent, I believe it fosters a much healthier environment for all of our students, their emotional health, especially at that 6th grade level, because I lived it with my child when the middle school opened. 11 years old is a little bit young to go into that environment. You go from playing Pretty Princess to you're getting ready for high school in a day. So I applaud you for that, and the research shows that 6th graders actually do much better when they're with their younger peers. And my suggestion, last thing, not asking for an answer, but just please keep in mind to alleviate some traffic and pedestrian congestion between the current middle school, the high school, and if approved, the junior high school. If you could possibly consider maybe having students enter the high school through that gymnasium area on Herman Avenue. The junior high school students, I'm sure, will be entering in their main door there. And then perhaps with buses and things like that for the 5-6 school, maybe having some of them go to Carteret Avenue. This way you have 3 streets absorbing all of that traffic. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll certainly be working with the board on that relative to transportation issues. Helen M. Helen?
You would like to second that suggestion she just made.
Hello everyone, my name is Helen Morataya. I am a mother of 5 children in Carteret, and I'm also a homeowner. And I want to ask you, what does $81 mean to you a year? To me, it really doesn't mean anything because I spend a lot more on hair dye, on lawn, so anything as a community, we have to, it's our responsibility to support any project that will benefit our students. Because these are tomorrow's future leaders, and we want them to feel like when they talk about Carteret and what school they go to, we want them to have pride in what schools they go to and about their towns. Because right now it's like, oh, okay. But I know she mentioned about building a high school, and I can guarantee you years ago this probably wasn't in projects, but this is a step into the right direction. So maybe in the future we can, somewhere along the line, build a high school and whatnot.
Thank you. I know Commander Lasicki is here, and he led us in the pledge, and he mentioned to me earlier, and the commander is a veteran of the Vietnam War. Give him a round of applause. And of course, the commander, as a veteran, and he married a senior citizen, and what he said to me, he said, Mayor, he says, I'm a veteran and my wife's a senior and George will be there one day. He says, but we have a responsibility to help the next generation. And so, Commander, I applaud you and even Gloria for your support of the question. Thank you. Marilyn Muskell. Marilyn?
Thank you. I live on the street, so I'm concerned about this junior high school. Firstly, schools are very close together. If there's a fire, God forbid, where are they going to go?
The building is designed, and I'll ask Lloyd to mention that, but it's designed where the buildings are at least 20 feet apart, wrapping around. There is a courtyard in between those buildings. So for purposes of fire exit...
When you would evacuate both schools, right?
You would have to, sure.
And where would you put them?
Well, they have a plan for evacuation, and I'd ask the architect and the super to touch on that.
And all the schools have appropriate stairs that lead out to the street, sidewalk to the street, so there'd be adequate exits from each of the schools to the outside. So that's part of the plan that would be developed as evacuation methods.
And what about student safety and residents when the construction is going on? Because this is going to take time. I understand you want to do a lot of this in summer when they're not there, but I mean, you got, look at the Performing Arts Center. I mean, it's a lot of construction going on, and you're going to have a lot of.
With the Art Center, we have the ability of closing down the street. We don't have the ability of doing that here. So they have to work within the confines of the area in front of the school. So that'll have to be...
The building would be built possibly a year and a half of construction. It would, obviously any construction site has people working on it, deliveries of material and services. But it would be done orderly, it would be done manageably, and it would be secured from students, pedestrians, cars, traffic. So like any other construction site, it would be secure and orderly, and it would be built in accordance with all regulations.
And again, about the flooding. So far this summer, I've had waterfront property and I've had oceanfront property. Because we flood from the park and from the street. God forbid there's a flood during the day and you've got hundreds of children. There's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to take them.
Well,
this pool underneath the building sounds like a great idea. Come to my house when it rains, or come to Sue's house, because Sue lives there too. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Now, the building, I understand they're gonna have a retention pond, but how much water is it gonna hold?
Nick?
Good question. It holds approximately 16,000 cubic yards of stormwater. That equates to the amount that hits the roof. But to answer your question, while storms hit quickly, we usually have some pretty good impact time. Number one, the weather service is much better now, where we get an idea about when the storms are coming. So if there is an opportunity for a storm, and you've seen this recently with Hurricane Dorian, where it came up, we knew about it days ahead of time. Those are not the storms that are causing the problem. Storms that are causing the problem are the ones that are hitting and have a quick amount of rain that comes through. When those do hit, it's normally not a flood condition for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours before. That gives more than enough time for a school to react. So to answer your question, could it come quickly? Yes. Can you react? Yes. The amount that we're storing is actually over the amount that's there, so it's going to improve the situation.
Okay.
I would also want to point out, and your time's up, but I do want to point out that most of our schools serve as disaster recovery areas if there's an incident in the town. So many of the schools have generators. It's part of the district's long-term plan to have generators. The building is 4 foot above the elevation of the current area, above the grass. So the building, it will be one of the safest and most secure buildings in town, and it will be out of the flood zone. You'll be fine. Yes. All right. Josephine Wilson.
Hi, I'm Josephine Wilson. I'm a proud kid for 20 plus years in Carteret. I started at Columbus School when it was a K-8 district and was part of the renovation and when it became a K-5. I was then transferred to Nathan Hale when it reopened, and I was part of that. Through both the processes, it was pain, but the pain added to everything we had. The elementary schools now are in good shape. Yes, there's no repairs, but as Mrs. Diaz said, we have starter programs. The one school we haven't been able to change was the middle school. We have the staff in, we have an award-winning chorus, we have a band that is bigger than ever. The board graciously is able to give us money for instruments, but what we don't have is the space. We have a chorus teacher who happens to be here tonight that is sharing a room, so he can only have chorus when there's not band. Last year he had to split his classes with the art class. When our students are moving to the high school, our visual and performing arts have become one of the strongest departments in the school. Year after year, we have students receiving scholarships, national awards. If we're going to continue this, we need to give the opportunity for our visual and our performing art teachers to grow their programs even further. It's amazing what they've done, but we can't change the space. We don't have any more rooms. As I said, the staffing's there, the materials are there. What we don't have is a chorus room, a band room. So I am 100% in support of the new 78 building, and I thank the board and the superintendent and assistant superintendent and the mayor for supporting this. And I really hope that the parents realize how important these programs are, and you vote yes.
Thank you. Before we go on to our next question, a point that I want to make, and then I'll throw it out there for a panel discussion, has to do with state aid. This year we received approximately $29 million in total state aid. If you go back to Governor Corzine's last year, he increased state aid that year by $4 million. The following year, 2010, Governor Christie cut state aid by $4 million. My point with that is when that school funding formula was put in place in 2009 and Governor Corzine came to Carteret, New Jersey, in the middle school to sign that law, it said that Carteret was underfunded. The state was screwing Carteret by $16.9 million per year. It was supposed to receive $4 million in 2009, $8 million in 2010, $12 million, and then $16 million. One administration later, not only did we not get the $16 million, we were $4 million less. Over the past 2 years, Governor Murphy has increased state aid to schools by $500 million. Carteret's been the beneficiary of about $3.5 million in total to that. According to the funding formula, if nothing else changes, it's less than $7. But the funding formula says next year we should be entitled to an additional $3 million, and the following year an additional $3 million until we reach that $16 million. If, Mrs. Superintendent and Mr. Higgins, if we do receive additional state aid next year, as the formula says, will there even be a need for an increase in taxation? We're saying $7 is the worst case scenario, $7 a month. But in fact, if we get additional money, it may be considerably less than that, or zero. Yeah, I know you've never seen a dollar you don't want to spend. I get that.
I think we have two buckets here. We have the debt service levy and we have the general levy to cover really the operations of the district. We know the debt service levy will go up based upon the scenario provided, the $81. If you get significant state aid into your current expense budget and the budget doesn't go up by more than that, that reduction as a result of the state aid exceeding the increases would offset that $81.
Tax relief.
Right, it would be.
I mean, in essence, this year, with the additional money, the board was able to reduce their tax levy by $500,000. So the board had a $500,000 tax cut this year. All right, we have a question from a Mr. Hardell Singh. Hardell?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Hardell Singh Johal. I am 5-decade resident of Carteret. And I have seen quite a bit so far as the education goes and in the management in town. Well, in town presently, if you look at, I'm going to give a statement less than 3 minutes. Don't worry for that. It will be less than, at the end I will ask a question, but I have to do the statement. See, in town presently, many parents are spending thousands and thousands of dollars sending their children to the private schools. It is not in the United States, same things in India, where I have personally adopted one public school to be comparative with a private school.
Do you want to adopt a public school here, Hardell?
Oh, yes. But
a couple $1 million and we can name the building after you. Just,
money is not the criteria here. The criteria is the education, the quality, the future of this country. If we have got a better education, believe me, most of the problems will be automatically eliminated. But in Carteret, I am so happy today that the management and the board and the education, everybody is looking towards to improve the education standard. My children graduated only up to 8th grade here, then I sent to private school. And of course, some are doctors or whatever. Best education, that's the best investment of any parents in life. I'm wondering that. Well, the thing again is this. The main factor to have a better education is a classroom size. Because the teacher can put more attention to the children to attend individual needs and what they really want for, where their weak points are, which way they have to get the standard up. Because supposing there are 50 students, the teacher cannot concentrate on it. If there is 20 or less, it's a lot better. So my question is, because only half a minute left, that this program, how it is going to affect the size of the classroom in the middle school, in the junior high school, and in the high school to have our main objective accomplished. But so far as the burden on the parents, on the homeowners is concerned, it is absolutely nothing. $7 per house or even $20 per month is absolutely negligible if your kids can get better education. Thank you.
Thank you. That question's for the superintendent.
So yes, I would agree with you, right? If we want to improve our community, our town, we have to make sure that we're providing our students with the best education possible. And yes, it does help when you have a smaller classroom size. And so with reconfiguring the schools, right, let's just give an example. The elementary schools, we would be removing the 5th grade from the elementary schools. So one school in particular has 5 5th grade classrooms. We would take those 5th grade students and house them over at Carteret Middle School. We now have 5 additional classrooms at the elementary where I can now create additional classrooms for our students. That's where the space comes in. That middle school now would have 7th and 8th grade students that would be leaving that building into a new space that's being created, that state-of-the-art junior high that we talked about. So now Carteret Middle School would only house 5th and 6th grade students.
But how is it going to affect the high school classroom size?
So the classrooms, there really isn't overcrowding at the high school level. I do want to mention that. Our classrooms size at the high school level is generally, 20, 22, depending on the courses. Some electives might be very popular, those get full, but scheduling is done a little differently at the high school level. But as a matter of space, we do have plenty of space in the high school. That's not an area of concern. Middle school is where we're really having an issue, and the elementaries.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sequella Moman. My question would be, with the new schooling, how would you be able to provide security so that the children that are in the junior high wouldn't be able to get into the high school? And then the other question is, would there be a uniform policy that would be separate for those students inside the junior high so that they can be spotted easily should they integrate with the high school?
2 parts to the question. So the building will be secured both at the entrances from the outside as well as the entrance that connects the building to the high school. So in the high school, we are going to connect the 2nd floor corridor through an existing room, which is going to be converted into part of the corridor that connects into the new junior high school. And there will be a security measure there. So there'll be somebody stationed there, there'll be security cameras, there'll be special doors that lock and prevent high school students from going into the junior high school or prevent junior high school students going into high school. So that would be a lockable, secure place that either place couldn't go to the other without having permission. As far as the front door goes, that would be secured as well. Someone could not get into the building without being announced and being escorted into the building. So those would be secured. As far as the uniform, I will let the superintendent.
Okay. We clearly haven't gotten that far, right? We can't just make any decisions like that until we know about what happened September 24th. But I would imagine that they would have to have some type of uniform that distinguishes them from the high school students as well.
Thank you. That concludes those who've signed in. If there's anyone who would like to address our panel, please raise your hand and John will give you the microphone. Are there any other questions from someone who has yet to ask a question? Just state your name for the record, sir.
Just solar, or is it going to go old school?
Question has to do about any solar technology or?
Well, we do incorporate solar technology where it's warranted and where it's economical. Solar technology has to be proven in these schools to be economical for the investment. So that would be looked at as far as what the investment of the cost is versus what the payback would be.
So it's allowed, but it's not currently called for?
It's not currently called for. The SREC value has decreased over the years, so the solar benefit to public entities are questionable, and we look at that at the time that it would be designed.
But will the roof be, if the roof is designed?
Be supported
okay.
And be able to be adapted for
any future
solar or any other technology that could come up. And we do, as an architect, we do design our buildings to the most energy efficient criteria. We have many LEED certified buildings, so the buildings itself are very, very, very economical to operate.
Thank you. Any other questions?
My question was, you said it was a 600 student for the junior high? Yes. So
as we grow our town and the capacity gets larger, where does the rest of the kids go if we go past the 600?
The board had a demographic study done for their projected population. So at the moment, we can't really predict too far in the future, but there is capacity in the buildings. If the district grows tremendously, at some point, 10 years from now, that have to be addressed at that point.
I always love the technical answers you get from the experts, but let me say this. There are 25 classrooms, right? 25 homerooms. But your science lab, your music room, your choir room, your dance room, those are not counted as homerooms. So there are additional classrooms there that if you had to have a homeroom, like when I was in the high school, science lab was a homeroom. Those science labs in this building aren't designed to be homerooms at the moment. They could always be homerooms. The choir, the music, the band room, they could be a homeroom in the future if that capacity grew.
If I may add, currently, if you have any students at Carteret Middle School, every room in that building is used as a homeroom. This would not be the case with that high school, and that's what the mayor is stressing. They actually have a homeroom to sit in, but then there's these beautiful additional spaces that can be used.
For purposes of the plan, Lloyd had to send using very specific data that the state requires to say this is how many students are going to go in there, but that can grow. So, any other questions? The young lady in the back?
Yes, hi.
Sit, Hardell.
I don't need mine.
Now, your husband is shaking his head. Yes, she doesn't need a mic.
My question is still based on the traffic problems that we have on Lewis Street. Now we have the middle school, 7th and 8th, and high school. Is it safe to assume that you are going to do different time things when classes start? Because that will also touch base on what this young lady said about how to keep the high school and the 7th and 8th grade separate. I mean, we're talking lots of kids on Lewis Street and a lot of traffic, buses. God forbid it rains, I can't get out of my driveway. Honest to God, that's God's honest truth. It takes me at least 40 minutes to get out of my driveway in the morning. I'm right across from the teacher's parking lot on Lewis Street. The park is behind me. I sit there.
I don't think we mentioned the time schedule. Yeah. But the superintendent?
We can definitely assure you that staggered entrance and dismissal times are absolutely part of the plan, and also logistically placing those entrances and exits for the students. So all of that absolutely is being considered and looked at.
Is there anyone who has not asked a question that would like to ask a question? No. Mr. Hardell.
Well, the only thing at the end which I want to request and appeal everybody that on 24th of September, please vote yes. So this project and all the little work we can achieve and make a difference that this is Carteret. And we can say we are proud to be a Carteret resident. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hardell. On behalf of our panel, I'd like to thank you for joining us here this evening. You saw the presentation. Now it's up to you as the voters of our community, as the taxpayers of our community, to make this determination, to make this decision. When it comes to city projects, it's up to the mayor and council. The vote doesn't go to the public. You have elected representatives for that. Because it's a Board of Education project and because they're looking to borrow approximately $37 million, only the voters of the district can approve that. So we look forward to support for this question and to getting in the ground in the school. Thank you for everyone for attending.